All right. Thank you so much, Andres Ayesta, for coming on to Wellness Your Way. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much, Megan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. Well, I've read your impressive formal bio, but please just start by telling our audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I guess I call this my 30-second elevator speech. So
Sure.
my name is Andres or Andres. I am a registered dietitian, Venezuelan immigrant. I live in Tampa, Florida with my wife. That's a little of the personal side. And then on the professional side, I founded a company called Planos Nutrition, and it basically is designed to help people build, I like to call it a blueprint. Planos is a Spanish word for blueprints, and really my philosophy is I want to help build a blueprint for your lifestyle, for your wellness, for your weight loss journey, whatever that may be the case. And we're helping mostly women who are just really sick and tired of the dieting world, and they just really want to find something sustainable, not just the weight that they lose, in the process of doing the diet, but also what happens afterwards. So in other words, the diet after the diet. So that's what we do now. And I have a master's degree in exercise science and sports nutrition. Most of my focus early in my career was actually working with professional and high caliber athletes. I just, got really inspired with my wife, who had a lot of health issues with gut health and different things like that. So I got fascinated by women's health. And that's when I started to really focus in more helping this population and helping them in ways to support not only their nutrition. We really have a more of a holistic approach to really focus also on their lifestyle, their mindset, fixing their relationship with food, and also something we like to call movement with intention. So that's a bit of the short version of it.
Thank you so much for sharing. And that holistic approach is honestly what attracted me to you as a guest for the podcast, because as we both know, there are plenty of diets and plans and all kinds of unsustainable things out there. But I appreciate that you're helping people actually change their mindset and work on something that is sustainable for them. And I think that you might share your mixed feelings maybe about January. I have mixed feelings. I'm excited that people are so into their health and so energized for health in January. I love that enthusiasm, but I'm also like cringing in my skin because so many of the things that people start in January are not designed for long-term success. And on that note, I've heard you say that 95% of all diets fail. So can you tell me about this?
Yeah, particularly around this time of the year. I was having a conversation earlier today with somebody who joined our program, and I was like, and she was telling me like, do you think this is the best time for me to start? And I was like, when do you think would be the best time? It's like, well, I'm thinking January. I was like, why is that? It was like, well, the holidays and all those different things like that. And I said, if you don't learn how to manage your health and your nutrition through the harder or more difficult seasons, in which
Yes.
like some people typically throw everything out in general terms out the window when it comes down to
Right.
nutrition and health, how can you expect to kind of create sustainable changes? And she's like, oh wow, it makes sense. So what do I say that 95% of the diets fail? And I refer to this like mostly also in as it relates to the beginning of the year, because
Yeah.
the beginning of the year is a new beginning. And for us humans, we always like new beginnings, whether it's Monday, right? So every single week is a new opportunity to start, or the
Right.
first of the month. And
Yep.
most importantly, the first of the year, because the
Yeah.
first of the year is like a bigger block of time. So people create goals, and they create or they have the New Year's resolutions that we continuously hear all the time,
Yeah.
right? And those typically fail because people sometimes struggle in setting realistic expectations for
Yes.
themselves. I think that's usually one of the biggest problems. And when it comes on to diets, what does it mean to create unrealistic expectations about diets? Well, diets are going to be very restrictive, most of them restrictive programs. And at the same time, they come with this like rule book, right? This like set of
Mm-hmm.
rules and this set of directions that you're supposed to follow. So for somebody the way I explain it is, if you don't have a strong foundation in your life, as in relates to health and your wellness and your habits that you're following every single day, it's really hard to put a very restricted diet on top of that. The way I explain it is like, imagine you're trying to build a skyscraper on the foundation of a one story home. it's not going to be very sturdy, or
Right.
it's not going to be very strong. So diets will fail because they crumble on a very weak foundation. And
Yes.
that's what happens to most people when they begin the new year, because they start to search, right? And okay, what's the next thing I should do? Should I do a ketogenic diet? Should I do
Hmm.
intermittent fasting? Should I do Optavia? Now there's like this big trends in TikTok where people are doing this Manjaro injections, right? Like a
Oh,
lot of different things around like rapid weight loss because they're desperate for a solution. And I don't
yeah.
blame them. And one of the things I tell them is like, it's not their fault.
Right.
It's usually the dieting industry fault, because
Right.
it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is competing for your attention because they
Hmm.
know you have such a deep problem that you really want a solution for. And that's cash money, baby, for them. So that's the
Yeah.
way they think about it. So they paid thousands of dollars in advertising. Like they try to make it as attractive as possible. And these diets are effective, don't get me wrong, they will
Right.
work, but they will work for the time that you would actually follow them. And usually the requirements for them, they're so crazy that
Hmm.
motivation typically doesn't really last too long for you to be able to sustain them. So what happens at the end, you leave the diet, you lost the 30 pounds in the 30 days, but the moment you stop, you're going to go back to your roots,
Yes.
right? The things that you're used to doing. And then that's when the weight starts to creep up, sometimes even faster than the
Right.
time that you actually lost them. So that's why I always say that, especially for the new year, that, you know, a lot of times diets fail and resolutions a lot of times are faulty because of these unrealistic expectations and a weak foundation as well.
Yes, I love that foundation analogy. And I just saw on Instagram another person in our industry who was saying, if you've ever been on a diet and lost weight, I'm so sorry for you. That's the worst thing that could happen. And she went on to explain that that's exactly what you said. It works. And so you think that the only way to do it is this super restrictive white knuckle your way. And then you go off and you gain the weight back. And then you have to do the restrictive again. And then you just keep flip flopping. And she said, which I agree with, I'm sorry that you believe that, because really the answer is finding a sustainable, moderate solution that actually works for you for the long term. And I believe that's what you're doing as well.
Yeah, and and like I always like tell people, I call myself diet agnostic. It's not like
Mhm.
I am, because like you, there's people that would obviously would go against them, and that's totally understandable. Like I in the wrong context, I think I also would, but
Yeah.
in general, I would say, you know, like, do all these diets have a place in the world? That they do. I think I like to call diets, or things like ketogenic diets, or especially the ones that do have like research background in them.
Right.
I just call them advanced nutrition strategies.
Yeah.
That means something advanced is something that is required for you to have, again, like some sort of like base knowledge for it. And most
Right.
people that are doing that, they don't really have that. And then at the
Hmm.
same time, the ones that don't have it and do it, like they don't have a plan for after their plan. So even if they have, for example, at least like some direction, somebody like guiding them properly on like, this is what you're gonna do for this amount of time, and then this is what you're gonna transition into.
Yes.
I'm pro of that, right? I
Yeah.
think it's just most people don't really take that approach.
Love that. Makes total sense. And at least until we get to those advanced nutrition strategies, you're promoting a more flexible approach. Like for me, for example, I would be very sad if I couldn't eat chocolate every day, just like little dark chocolate. It makes me so happy. But I have zero problem not eating pasta, for example. Not saying pasta is a terrible food no one should eat. It's just not my food of choice. And I've seen you talk about how there is room for things that are really important to us, like chocolate for me or whatever for someone else. But oftentimes when I say that to people, like, oh, I eat chocolate every day, they feel that if they're allowed to eat that, they're just going to go crazy. And then when Megan says I'm allowed to eat chocolate, then they're going to eat like 12 bars of chocolate per day. So how do you tell people who are just starting building their foundation to work to find moderation?
I think the only thing I do around that is I remove one important word, which is allowing, right?
Ah,
I don't tell
great.
people I'm allowing you to do things. You can do whatever you want. It's
Yes.
more about explaining and understanding. Okay, like what's in a chocolate? Like, and I typically I'm a person that likes to explain the why behind things. And my
Great.
flexible approach is telling them, okay, like I also eat chocolate every day. but I don't eat like 20 pieces of chocolate like after lunch and after dinner, because
Right.
I just don't do it. It's like, well, why don't you do it? Because I believe in moderation. It's like, okay, how do I practice moderation? Well, the one thing that I always like tell people is like, whenever we always want things, like our nature as humans like dictate that we want things that we can't have. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever you're telling somebody like, oh, like you can't have this, and a lot of these programs that they have like this list, like these are the foods you can eat and these are the foods that you
Right.
can't eat, right? Then it creates like people immediately look at the list of the things that they can't eat, right?
And
That's
they
the
want
first
it.
thing that they start with.
Yes.
So it's prohibited items. So they restrict themselves, they follow the thing, they're trying to be good. And then the moment that they lose a little bit of like power of will, and they let themselves go and have one item of that prohibited list, then immediately they're going to go crazy, or sometimes like they lack control around it. So
Yes.
what do? I eliminate prohibition around it. So no, there's no literally line that exists between this two and this two. And I also do
Right.
not tell them you're allowed to have these things or you're
Yes.
not allowed to have these things, because that still creates some sort of like prohibition around it, even if you're telling me that I can do it. So I always kind of start with like, okay, like what are some of the favorite foods that you like? Well, I like
Yeah.
this, I like pasta, or I like pizza, I like all those different things. Like, okay, there are healthier alternatives or ways in which you can make this, right? Without really sacrificing your health and your goals. I always explain, okay, in a flexible approach, what are your goals? Well, you want to lose weight. We need to create a condition that is like, in your body, we call that a deficit of calories or calorie deficit, that is required for your body to be able to lose the fat that you're trying to lose. That means that you're gonna have to fight some hunger, like cues to a certain extent, because your body's gonna be telling you we need some food because
Right.
you're not giving it fully what it needs. So a lot of times, like you're going to be inclined to go for things like the chocolates and different things like that, because of the fact that those are, we call them hyper palatable foods.
Mm-hmm.
They're foods that are easy to overconsume, and they hit different reward systems in your brain that they make them really, really, really tasty and really want to
Yes.
overdo it. But the thing too is like when we come down to moderation, I was like, hey, listen, like I'm gonna tell you, you can have a chocolate every day if you want to, right? And I don't usually say anything else. I just wanted to teach basically a macronutrient approach. So I teach people like, okay, like try to track, or at least like for purposes of understanding, your macronutrients for the day, your calories for the day, and see how that chocolate fits into it. Oh my God, I did have a chocolate every day. I was able to kind of fit it into my calories. Okay, then perfect. You did. Let's look at the quality of your nutrition. Was your macros only built around chocolate and pizza and soda and different things like that? No, I wasn't. And typically what we tend to see is like when people have this approach, they're just more focused on the healthier items because they don't really have this need for that one food that they can't have, right?
Yeah.
So the point in case, I had a client once who but she said she had a problem with Oreos, right? She said like, I have a whole sleeve, like sometimes like a couple times a week, and I feel so terrible about it. I was like, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to allow yourself, right? I'm using allow here because it's not allow the food, is allow yourself
Yeah.
to have like whatever you want tonight, but maybe try to keep it to 1 to 2 pieces of Oreos every single night. Can you do that for me? Sure. I'm telling you to do it. Okay. Perfect. And then what she started noticing is she was no longer going for the whole sleep, because she knew she could, tomorrow she can have another 2 pieces.
Yes.
And maybe she was having a sleep per week, but not maybe necessarily like 3 or 4 sleeps, like, like over the course of an entire week. So it makes a big
Right.
difference. I think
Yes.
people a lot of times would just understand like the nutritional basics of it, and they think like food is either good or bad, and that
Yes.
dichotomy that exists between the two a lot of times creates this fear around it. And that's my problem with, for example, TikTok and a lot of social media right now,
Right.
because it's a platform that is growing in nutrition because of fear mongering. It's
Yeah.
about like have you seen those videos, the ones that you go in a grocery, like the people go in grocery stores and they
Yes.
tell you like, I'm gonna tell you why this is poison, right?
Yes.
I understand what your intentions are, but then
Yeah.
you're creating so much fear for somebody that maybe just is starting like, really with good intentions, their
Right.
weight loss journey, and they go to the grocery store and that's the first thing they see.
Right.
They get overwhelmed because I
Yes.
hear it all the time. So that's a
Yes.
little bit about the ways that I kind of combat that allowance of or prohibition type of thing with foods.
I love that. I've used this strategy not with Oreos, but with other problematic foods that people believe are problematic for them. And I've said, have it every night. Just try it and see how it feels. And then sometimes they realize, oh, on those nights when I only had one Oreo, I slept better, or my digestion was better the next day, or I didn't even really want it because I was enjoying it more mindfully or whatever. And when they come to that realization themselves, it's so powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's a big mindset shift. I
Yes.
think it's a moment in which people like you know they realize like wow, like sometimes like people would offer me a piece of cake and I'm like, oh no, if I was in the mindset of restriction, but oh my God, yes, because like I'm being so good, right? I think a lot of times we use food as a reward, and this is very important for people to listen.
Yes.
Um, we use food as rewards, right? Like I'm gonna reward myself with a piece of
Mm-hmm.
cake or a
Right.
chocolate because I've been so good today.
Right.
But so good according to what and according to who? That's what I always
Mm-hmm.
say. Like, you know, who said that avoiding chocolate all day it's actually been good? Who said that
Right.
like consuming sugar in moderation it's like a terrible thing for you? It depends on
Right.
the context, it depends
Mm-hmm.
on the environment that we're really kind of talking about in here. So when you create these reward systems, then usually what you're going to do is you're going to create this all or nothing thinking. What
Yes.
happens is, you know, you're either all in or you're all out, right? So
Right.
the moment you make a bad decision, I think we're going to be talking about this here in a minute. But the moment you make one bad decision, your mind goes, I already screwed up. So I might
Mm-hmm.
as well just continue to screw up. And then we go back to that new beginning, right? The new beginning is next Monday, or the new beginning is next month. And then they go
Yes.
into this cycle and this this wheel that never ends. And that gets them stuck in there forever. And that's usually one of the biggest reasons why people have struggles with weight loss or just health overall or trying to change their eating habits.
I agree. That cycle is so vicious. And I think you're emphasizing the words I was good, I was bad. I was going to say I never let my clients say that, but I'm rethinking the word allow and permission. Like you said, I advise my clients not to say that, that food is good or bad, or, well, you could say food tastes good. That's the only way it fits in,
Yeah,
but no food is good or bad. You were not good or bad. There's no morality attached to not
correct.
eating your chocolate or anything like that. I think this negative self talk, though, is so pervasive in our society. Just like you said with TikTok in the grocery store, we are brainwashed by thinking we're good if we only eat this, or we're bad if we eat something like that. And I think just like you said, it holds us back, not just mentally, but physically as well. So when
Yeah.
people are listening to us and they realize that, oh, wow, I do have this negative self-talk, I do say good or bad, what's a step or two that they could take to start to reverse negative self-talk?
One of the answers actually is in one of your previous episodes. I think it was Beth that was actually on, and she
Okay.
talked a lot about celebrating small wins,
Yes.
or celebrating or acknowledging wins. I think is kind of how you refer to them.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the most important steps. And I'm going to agree
Mhm.
with her and with you because
Yes.
it we like I always like love to use analogies. So here goes another one.
Great.
Every time we enter into a journey that we're trying to accomplish something, right? It's kind of like we're about to hike a mountain, right?
Yep.
I think a lot of the times, whenever we're hiking a mountain, we are so focused on either the top, right? And we're just looking at that top and we're like, oh my God, that is so far away.
Hmm.
And we're so focused on the top and we're looking up that we don't really pay attention to the first step that we're supposed to be taking. And we
Yeah.
stumble a lot, right? And I
Yes.
think that's one of the biggest issues that happens with people because the diet in like the 30 pounds is actually way out top, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the main issues. Now, when people start to make smaller steps, a lot of times people become impatient. And I think this is when that negative self talk starts to happen. This is not happening fast enough.
Mhm.
This is not happening at the speed that I want. I suck. I can't really, or you're just supposedly be doing very good, but then the one
Mhm.
time you're bad or the one day you're bad, and then you throw everything out the window. The thing in
Yeah.
that journey that you're on is like you just focus so much on like, oh, you just fail, but you don't haven't really taken a look back to see how far you've come. So it's a
Yes.
matter of perception or perspective. right? So when you climb mountain, if you don't ever look back down to see, wow, like how far you've come up until this point,
Yes.
then nothing will ever feel like it's enough, or nothing will ever feel like it's good enough, right?
Yes.
And I think that's a bigger problem. Like I saw a TikTok the other day too of this woman who mentioned, like, I've lost 40 pounds, but my brain keeps telling me that, oh, but you're still over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
See, so that negative self mindset that a lot of times it's like really popping in you, because your brain and your ego are telling you like, oh yeah, little clap in here for your 40 pounds, but guess what, you're still 200 pounds. And
Yeah.
this is obviously where the society norms obviously come in play, and society tells us that women should not be over 200 pounds,
Right.
right? And that's usually where like the other part comes in, which is external factors, which is what you
Mm-hmm.
see outside, right? You're comparing yourself with it's outside, and you know, you're comparing yourself to this person that is like this way, or this person that is this way, and then that creates more toxicity inside of your brain. So number one, acknowledge and celebrate small victories, what,
Yeah.
right? And number two is understand that there's no like, you know, it's the back to the all or nothing thinking. It's not black or white. There could be some places in between. So
Yes.
when you're experimenting a journey, when you actually have a fallback, when you have like something that you feel you did not do right, understand that it's not the end of the world and you can continue pushing forward. It's just a bit of a hiccup. It's an obstacle, and then you can continue moving forward in the way that you were going. And that's one of the most important things that a lot of times that we have to understand. And what I tell people sometimes is like, you know, you have to take a step back. You have to really focus on being present and remind yourself, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm fine, right? I am
Yes.
doing what I can and just trying to be a little bit more self-compassionate, right?
Yes.
It's like telling yourself, instead of like beating yourself up because you did something wrong, is telling yourself, what, you know what, maybe I didn't really make the best decisions, like going out with my friends in this restaurant, but today, all day today, I actually was really very conscious about what I was eating, and I also got a workout in. See
Yes.
how it's like completely different perceptions or
Yes.
perspectives around this, because the same person is just like, I'm the terrible person because I went and I just like ate so bad. Yeah, but did you even look at what you did well today? No,
Right.
right? So it's all paired together with that celebrating small victories, self-compassion, and trying to really get rid of that all or nothing thinking. So those would be three important areas that I think is going to help you overcome that negativity that a lot of times keep you in the same place.
I love it. That's so helpful. I hope the audience is taking notes because you're sharing gold right here. Have you ever read that book, The Gap and the Gain?
No, but I love book recommendations, so
I
I
think
want
you would
to.
really like it. And for the audience as well. Basically, the premise is just what Andres just said, which is the gain, which is how far we've come, is so seldom focused on. We're always focusing on the gap, how far we have to go. And this book is written in the business context, but there's a lot of health overlap. So highly
I
recommend
love
it.
that. The gap in
Yeah.
the game. Okay, good.
Yes.
Good
Yes.
recommendation. I'm gonna add that to my book list. I have like an
Great.
entire library, as you can see here.
I see your library back there. I'm a huge reader. I love reading. So I always am rife with book recommendations.
Awesome. I love
Well,
it.
let's take what you just said, those three tips, and let's apply them to someone who maybe is going to a holiday party or something like that. And they wake up the next day and they just feel like they've overindulged and they start feeling really bad about themselves and they start beating themselves up. And then they remember, okay, I just heard Megan and Andres, and they just said, have compassion for yourself, celebrate all the things that you did do well. They try to focus on that. And then what do they do during the day? Are there things that they can do to start reminding themselves that they're right where they need to be? Or are there lessons they can learn? What would you advise for them then?
Yeah, I love this. Let's actually put a spin to this, because I did post about this the other day, and I think it would be a great opportunity for. We're gonna create two scenarios, okay?
Okay,
And then there's
great.
gonna be like we're gonna take, you know, we're gonna think like, I don't know, let's say Anna and Nancy, okay?
Okay,
Let's just get Anna and Nancy. Those are like the two our two guests for today,
great.
also joining into our podcast. So
Okay,
Anna, both of them went to the same party, right?
okay,
They went to a holiday party, and both of them like are in a journey of trying to improve their health or trying to lose weight. They're really kind of struggling with their body and their body image and different things like that. So it's been a struggle for both of them. So they go to this holiday party, and both of them, they don't know each other, but they both of them overindulge, just like you mentioned, right? They
Yeah.
ate more than they needed to. They really ate past like hunger cues, like
Yeah.
and they were just like so full, and they come home and they feel so guilty. And the next morning, they both wake up, they feel like, man, that was so much. Now I'm gonna tell you obviously the differences between the two. So let's say, for example, you take Anna, and Anna says to herself, you know what? Like maybe I did not do too well last night, but today's a new day. And today's a new day in which I'm going to focus on making smart decisions. And I'm going to do the 2 to 3 things that I said that I was going to do today. So I'm going to like prep my meals, and maybe I'm going to go on a walk, and I'm going to make sure that I get, some quality sleep, or I'm simply going to just say something that I'm grateful for.
Great.
Great. And then Anna goes in through the day, and she's not restricting herself. She's actually practicing really good, like, balance between the things, and she moved on, right?
Yes.
Now, Nancy, on the other hand, wakes up in the morning and she's like beating herself up. She's telling herself how terrible she is. She sucks. She's talking to herself in ways like she would never talk to anybody. Like, you're a piece of beep, you're a piece of this, like, and you cannot do things right, and like you're always going to fail. And what she does is she's trying to punish herself. So Nancy's going to go and she's going to either fast, or she's going to be eating lettuce all day, very restrictive. And she really try to do well. But because at night, she obviously, her physiology is telling her, listen, like, you need food. And then the emotion kind of like rolls over and everything like that. You're exhausted. You're not really thinking straight. And then nighttime comes, and then she binges again.
Yes.
Right. And the history repeats. So Nancy, like, now goes into the next day and the next day, and maybe some days in between are okay, or maybe she'll go through the entire week and she's super restrictive, and then the weekend she completely loses it. While Anna is, on the other hand, she's slowly chipping away. She's making smaller micro decisions that are helping her move through her destination. The differences between the two of them is Anna practice self-compassion, Anna practice celebrating small victories, right? And Anna practice the approach of the not the all or nothing thinking, while Nancy, on the other hand, did complete opposite. She was hard on herself, right? She's either all or nothing. So I'd either like, I'm perfect or I'm not. Right. And she's a person that did not even acknowledge anything positive that could have happened the day before or the day after. People gain weight through the holidays, not because of the fact that of what they did in one meal. People need to understand this. And research even shows this. I actually showed the other day that there's overfeeding studies that show that the amount of fat you can gain from eating something crazy like 4,000 to 6,000 calories. This was done in a male population, of course, so it may be different for women, but even some similar studies show that. Guess how many grams of like fat they gain over one meal? It's something so freaking small that you cannot even see it on a scale. So of course, weight goes up. Weight is not the same thing as fat. So like, stop worrying so much about that one meal, because that one meal is making you make multiple decisions that are creating that weight loss, that weight gain that you're experiencing over the holidays. And one of what the studies typically show too is the same people typically struggle losing that weight through the years. So 5 years goes by. How many times do you work with somebody that, they tell you 10 years ago, I was like 30 pounds lighter. I don't know what happened, right? I do know what happened. Like, life on the way, different things happen. But that's the big differences between the two. And you're going to see that Anna is going to finish the holidays either maybe not losing weight, because of course she was just trying to be realistic as possible, but maybe she maintained. And then Nancy, at the other hand, like, she may have gained like maybe 5 pounds. She may have put on some weight, and then she just feel like horrible with herself, and that mindset still hasn't changed. See the difference between the two? So a lot of times I ask people, is like, which one do you prefer to be? You want to be Anna or you want to be Nancy? No offense to Nancy. Everybody's like, I want to choose to be Anna because I need to be kinder to myself,
Absolutely. And I want to point out what you just said for our audience, that not only does Anna actually make more progress in terms of the scale or however she's going to measure her progress, but she feels so much better the whole time. So a lot of people think it's either or, like, oh, if I'm Anna, then I'm just soft on myself, but then I'm going to gain more weight. Actually, what your example is saying is, no, you get the best of both worlds. You get to feel better emotionally, mentally, which I think is the biggest prize, and you get more close to the results that you were looking for. So that's a great Anna and Nancy example. I love that.
People think success is going to be found well, first of all, in the body that they accomplish, or like the changes they need to make, what they're putting on their plate.
Yeah.
But success is first found in your mind, right?
Yeah.
It's when you change the way you think, when you
Yes.
readjust the belief system that you have, that a lot of times is the very same like thing that is keeping you in the same place that you have not moved from. Right? In
Yes.
order for you to be willing in order for you to get to a place that you haven't gotten to, you need to be willing to do things differently. And one of those things is not always trying a new diet. That's
Yeah.
usually where people typically make a mistake. Is like, well, if I need to do something different, I may need to change the way I think. And
Right.
that's where we, a lot of times inside of our, like we have in our program, we have like one area that we focus is called mindset shifting. And
Great.
that's the first thing that people say, like, okay, sure, yeah, right. But then when they go through it, they understand, wow, like now I understand what you're saying, like, because I think differently. And when I go to places and I'm in different situations, I make different decisions that are going to be more goal supportive. And that's
Yes.
what's most powerful and most important.
Oh, I love it so much. That's great. I have just a couple more questions for you. One is a little bit tangential to what we've been talking about so far, but I'm curious your perspective on how stress and lack of sleep and all of those kind of related factors impact people's goals and their health.
Yeah. And that part is going to fall into, so I have like 4 pillars of health that I always like to teach people. Nutrition,
Great. Yeah.
mindset shifting is really what we call it nutrition mastery, mindset
Great.
shifting, movement with intention. And the stuff that the things that you just mentioned is what I like to call lifestyle revamping, right?
Great.
It's like really looking at what areas of your lifestyle you really need to change, and stress and sleep kind of fall into that specific pillar.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they impact your progress? How do they impact your health? They can do so in a multitude of ways, and all of them are actually research based. So we can start with stress, and I'm gonna literally, this could be an entire podcast in itself, so I'm gonna try to keep it very short and
Okay.
sweet. But stress is one of those things that, from the physiological standpoint, let's just kind of start there. It can create an environment. I always like to tell people it's an environment where your body is like shifting your, like the way that carbohydrates and fats and different things are being used when you are in situations of like high stress. Like cortisol,
Mm-hmm.
it's a hormone that gets elevated. We live in a society where stress is everlasting. It's
Yes.
everywhere, right? We're
Yes.
stressed because of kids, because of money, because of work. So the way I explain this is like, from the evolutionary standpoint, we're not really meant to be stressed all the time.
Right.
And the way I explain it to people is like, imagine like if a tiger was like coming into your room, how would you feel? Like, oh my God, like run, like it's a fight or flight response, right?
Yeah.
So you either fight or flight. Hopefully you will flight, because you're not going
Yeah.
to fight a tiger, right?
Right.
So when your body's getting ready to do either of them, your body's like really shifting a lot of things inside to really prepare you to take off, to actually have energy available to do all those different things. Now, what I tell people a lot of the times is like, well, imagine you have like multiple tigers coming at you all day long, and that's going to be your boss in a nasty email, or your kids making you crazy, or you looked at your bank accounts and your finances were not great, whatever may be the case. So the problem about this is like, it creates this fight or flight response, but there's nowhere to run to, and there's nothing to really fight. So you're just
Right.
sitting in there, and the shift of the way that your body's processing carbohydrates and fats, it starts to get affected. And that
Yes.
a lot of times can create issues with more fat storage and different things
Yes.
from that sort, because a stressed body is not a body that likes to change. It's a body that needs to calm down before
Right.
anything good needs to happen. So
Yes.
I always like to tell people, as strategies, that when you're thinking about improving your health and all these different things like that, you really need to focus on managing your stress, because guess what? Stress is also related with emotional eating. When we're
Yes.
stressed, we're usually trying to find ways in which we can calm ourselves down.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, it's going to be exercise, and not necessarily has to be a bad habit. But for other people, they're going to eat, right?
Right.
Because a lot of times sugar, it's soothing, it's a rewarding mechanism that they get, so it calms them down.
Yes.
So obviously stress combined with emotional eating, you're not really paying attention to your hunger cues. So
Right.
that's one, that's stress and how
Right.
it can impact your weight loss journey. The
Yes.
second one is sleep. there's a talking about book recommendations. Here goes one for you. There's a
Good.
book called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker.
Okay.
Wonderful guy. He's a researcher on specifically on sleep. And literally the entire book explains everything that happens when you remove 1, 2, 3, or 4 hours of sleep at night,
Wow.
right? Craziest things, right? But then just to not get myself too extensive into the whole, like all the consequences, I'll just focus on the one on weight loss. Some really crazy studies have found that, let's say, for example, you and I are put into this like sleep study, and you're put to sleep only 4 hours a night, and I'm put to sleep 4 hours and 8 hours a night. So we're in different like situations. And then we're both gonna be showing to a buffet the next morning, and they're gonna tell us, hey, Megan, Andres, you are allowed to eat whatever you want. So no worries, you can just eat. All what we wanted you to do is you need a full sleep, and then you need 8 hours of sleep. Okay, cool. So what they found in these studies, observing these people, is they looked at you, again, no offense, just essentially just kind of like for the purpose of that. So they look at Megan, and Megan ate 400 to 500 calories more that day compared to me, right? And then just say like obviously to women, whatever. So what they found is that people that are sleep deprived, they tend to overeat a little bit more unconsciously. They don't even notice it. Not only that, but they did follow-up studies where they put actually people in an actual diet. Like they put them on a restricted calorie process. So they were not telling them to go to the buffet and say, hey, eat whatever you want. No, they were controlling what they were consuming. Two groups. The only difference is one group slept 4 hours, and the other group slept 8 hours. And guess what they found? Both groups lost weight, but one of them lost mostly muscle, which was a group that actually was sleep deprived. So this goes to explain too that your weight is not everything, because of the fact that you want to lose muscle mass. No, that's not obviously what we want.
Of course not. Right.
So the other group actually lost mostly fat, not muscle, right? And then I think I'm not gonna get into like the science behind it, but there's something related to hormones, to cortisol, to growth hormones, and all those different things like
that. Because that's
that you have
secreted
in your
during
body.
deep sleep. So without it, the right secretion of growth hormone, I'm sure you're more likely to lose muscle. Yeah.
Yeah. And this happened in men and women. So again, like this is why sleep is something that in our program we focus so much on. And again, like we work with a lot of moms. So like, I mean, like I'm gonna be a parent soon. I'm literally like we're expecting our first child.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I know for a fact that my sleep may be like restricted for a certain amount of time. And that's why a lot of times I'm talking to a lot of moms inside of our program and trying to get them to prioritize that to whatever it's possible, because some women's like, hey, it's impossible. I had to feed the baby and all these different things. Like, okay, totally understandable. But it's something that you want to bring awareness to, if that makes sense.
And it's all about doing what we can. Even you and I, who have our professions in this, well, at least me, I don't know about you, but I can't do 100% of all the thousands of things every single day. It's just about doing what we can and striking that balance. And then, like you said, having compassion for yourself. If you have a new baby and you can't get 8 hours of sleep, well, that's okay.
Correct.
Do what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about a process of trying to check boxes. Like I need to check as many boxes as I can, because that goes back into the all or nothing mentality.
Right.
Like there are certain things that you may not be able to do today. And also it comes down to a process of, I like to call them seasons, right? Yeah. There are seasons through your year in which like maybe you may prioritize a lot more nutritional or related things. Like maybe you have a lot more time to work out like extra time, and maybe to pay more attention to your food preparation and your sleep. But there's going to be other times in the year in which like it's very difficult. You like right now the holidays, right? Like maybe you have like tons of family that visit, you have a ton of people that bring food, and if you feel like, again, back to the conversation about unrealistic expectations, if you have this unrealistic expectation that, oh, I want to like lose 20 pounds throughout the holidays, I don't care whatever like comes at me, it's going to make it so hard, because you're going to be very hard on yourself whenever you feel like something doesn't go perfect, or it's not like, it doesn't really go the way that you want it. And that's one of the big things that we try to avoid.
Oh, this is so great. Well, I know our audience is going to want to learn more about you and your program. So I will ask you that as the closing question. But just before that, if you could boil all this wisdom down to maybe one or two takeaways, for our audience, what would those be?
I love that. I think one, it's going to be to focus on, I think, understanding why you want where you want, specifically to your goals,
Right?
right? So when you want a goal and you think you focus on, okay, I want to lose 30 pounds. I always start with every single one person that I work with. I focus on why, right?
Yes.
Why do you want to accomplish this? Because that is going to determine everything in
Yes.
terms of obviously what goes next, because that's what drives your motivation, what gets you out in the morning. So that's number one. And number
Great.
two, honestly, we've said it a million times, but you have to be compassionate on yourself. Like
Yes.
when you start to practice that, like even research shows that you start to really be like kinder to you, and you start to make decisions with more clarity. And that is something that is incredible. And when people start to really shift that mindset around that, it really amazing thing happens. I'm not gonna tell you to like eat this or eat that, because that's what a lot of times people expect of a nutritionist or a coach or a
Right.
nutrition or a dietitian. And that's something that a lot of times we have to really try to understand.
Oh, amazing. Those are such great takeaways. So now I'd love it if you could tell our audience where they can find out more about you and your work and your programs. Just share all the things.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we work mostly with women. We don't discriminate on men. So we do have some guys in the program. But we do have a program called the Nutrition Blueprint Method. And it's basically a process where a lot of things that we talked about today, we try to tackle those things in a process of 6 months. We really try to like get people to change their sleep, their nutrition, their stress management, like all those different areas in a process that is guided. So it's a very personalized coaching program. And really one of the things that we a lot of times like to do is like to offer a complimentary like call. We call it a blueprint call, where we can actually kind of get to connect with you for a little bit, just to try to understand whether or not you may be a good fit, or we may be a good fit for you in that process. So you can go to planetnutrition.com/blueprint, and that's a place where you can kind of get connected on there. And then of course you can find me on Instagram, where you're gonna see me doing funny reels and different things like that. And that's gonna be at Andres Ayesta on Instagram as well.
That's great. And I did check out your Instagram. You do have great reels and great content. So we'll definitely link to the website, the program, and the Instagram account in the show notes. And I hope people go check you out. And one more time, thank you so much for coming on Wellness Your Way, Andres. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you so much, Megan. It was a pleasure being here today.
Thank you.